Hello, my friends. I'm Jacob Nordby, and it has been a minute since I did a video update for you. My life has been going through so much change in this last 3 months. How about you? I was looking at the Power Path monthly update in October, and the theme for that month was tumultuous transitions. And little did I know that that was going to really characterize um, my life, because I actually moved into a new house during that month while I was producing the Heal Plus Create Writers Retreat, getting that all ready to go. And so that made for a really exciting, really exciting month. And as you can see behind me, the wall is bare. I got myself moved in and got the cats. You probably know my cats. One is the cat himself. His given name was Oreo, but he earned that by being sort of the haughty, self-important ruler. So the cat himself, and he's been with me for about 12 years, I guess. And he's used up at least 6 of his 9 lives, but he's mostly content these days and runs around this new neighborhood. And then his younger adopted brother, Crackweasel, his given name was Odin, but he earned the name Crackweasel, and he continues earning it every day. But anyway, they're happy with the new situation. There are stairs in this house, and there are still boxes lying around for them to play with. So I love I love when life changes, but I think that I'm probably similar to all of us humans. What I've discovered is humans really hate two things. They hate it when things don't change. Life just goes along. And then they hate it when things do change. So when I say they, I mean we. I'm also human. So, oh, and there's a third one, unexpected change. So we really don't like it when things stay the same. We really get anxious when they change, and we especially get anxious when it's unexpected change. So I was thinking about this year and how much change has come into my world. I won't take the time to detail all of that right now, but I am going to do a New Year's Eve gathering that'll just be open for everyone, and I'll make sure and send you an invitation for that. And that'll be a time of reflection, a time to really listen to the inner self, to our inner selves, and say, what do I long to create in this coming year? And what do I long to see cleared out of my life in some way? What would I love to see change? Because what I have noticed is that if I come into a different relationship with change, it's no longer as terrifying. When I realize and I remind myself on a daily basis that the constant of this universe, the constant of life is change, which means I'm always going to be experiencing a degree of uncertainty. Part of my brain really hates uncertainty, just like yours does. I don't know anyone who is such an adrenaline junkie that they love change in every part of their life all of the time, never know what to expect, because part of that part of our brain's job is to create predictability, which makes us feel safe, makes us feel okay, and makes us feel like we know where we're going. But what about times when the road ahead is too foggy or dark or something, or just twisty to really know where we're going? Have you ever started out on a trip and maybe your phone died? And can you believe that we're talking about your phone died? When I was a kid, if you went on a trip and you got lost, you'd have to pull over at a gas station and find a phone book and flip to the very back of the book and then look through those pages of maps. But of course, now we have these marvelous devices that help us stay on track. But what happens if you start a long road trip and your phone dies, your navigation system's out, it's getting dark, it's raining, and you have a long ways to go, and you really don't know where you are? You might miss that critical exit or something. It brings up anxiety, right? Suddenly our blood pressure rises, our breathing gets shallower, we start to get kind of narrow vision, like, okay, how am I going to survive this? And of course, that's a fairly benign example. Most likely you'll survive. But the fact is, part of our brain tells us when we're going through change, when there's uncertainty about the road ahead, part of our brain says you won't survive. We need to lock down. We need to go into defense mode. Which is a natural part of the wisdom of our own body, that is saying, hey, hey, watch out, danger ahead. Pardon me. The trouble is that can sometimes really limit us when it's time to take a leap, when it's time to take a step forward in life. It can really limit our ability to do that. And so this little update will not give you the once and for all magic toolkit to do away with the fear of change, but sometimes just being aware of what's going on inside of us, of ourselves, can really make a difference, can really help us. It's like, if I know that I'm getting ready to go through something uncomfortable, I can take a deep breath. I can remind myself that I'm safe. I can allow myself to open up to intuition. If I, however, just lock down and just go with instinct on that, um, a lot of times those feelings are telling some truths, but they may not be current truths. You know how in our culture, you often hear, oh, feelings always lie. You can't trust your feelings. Okay, I disagree very strongly with that. I feel that feelings always tell a truth. So your nervous system, connected to your memory, connected to just your overall ability to take in input, comes up with a feeling, and that feeling might feel like fear. It might feel like panic. It might feel like anger. And sometimes those things will come out in moments when we're like, that didn't make any sense. I behaved or reacted in a way that's really just not even me. Like, what was going on there? And what I found that if I'm willing to put those embarrassing situations to inquiry, most of the time I find out that I was reacting based on a feeling that came up because some part of my psyche brought up a memory and said, see, this is exactly like that situation when you experience so much pain or disappointment or rejection or whatever it might be. And so what I like to do is say, how can I go and be with the part of me that still believes that I'm in mortal danger, physical pain, mortal danger, some kind of really bad deal is going to happen if if I don't react to this, you know. Generally speaking, reactions are coming from fear, some version of fear, some version of anxiety, whereas responses, that is where we're actually choosing the next action, the next word, even the next thought, right? And that can help us shift those feelings. So many times, I was watching myself go through something like this earlier this year, where got in a situation, somebody said something completely innocently, it brought up a feeling, and my initial impulse was to react with anger. And I took a deep breath and just made a note of that, saying, okay, I need to pay attention to what's going on in there in my journal in meditation later, because this was an outsized feeling given the situation. When I went and did that later, I discovered that there was a 9-year-old boy in there who had this memory still locked in those cells in my body. That part of the memory was still locked in there. That when it wasn't the exact same situation, but it was similar. And so my brain brought it up and said, here it is, here it is. We need to feel this way. We need to react this way. And what I discovered was that 9-year-old boy really hadn't had a way to resolve that. He hadn't had a way to speak up and stand up for himself. And so it brought up these feelings of insecurity, of fear, of not being enough, of not being worthy to be there, and that was not the intent of the other person. So that's just one example. Had I reacted the way I felt immediately, there likely would have been some repair needed. Which is okay. If that happens, it's okay. And I think that's a good thing to remind ourselves. If repair is needed, honesty, vulnerability, that sort of thing can usually become the medicine in those situations if we've reacted based on an old memory, an old feeling. So I would just love to say that feelings don't lie. Feelings always tell a truth. Often it's not the truth of the current situation. Often, if I'll step back and I ask myself, what's needed here? What do I need here? What does the situation call for? What does this other person need? Often that can widen that gap between stimulus and response that I've talked about so many times, that I was going to say Joseph Campbell because he's one of my favorites, but no, Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning. Between stimulus and response, there's this space, and in that space lies our power to choose. And within our power to choose is our power to create a life that matters, to create things, experiences, relationships, environments, our body, the way we live our lives, the way we earn our livings. Between those two things, stimulus and response, in that space, there's this choice. The narrower that space is, the less choice we have, the less creative, co-creative driver's seat ability we have to direct and architect, design, and then live a beautiful life, live the artful life that we really want to see. We'll talk more about that. I feel like we're heading into a phase during which so much resilience, resourcefulness, creativity, compassion, empathy, intuition, all of these things are dearly needed in this next phase of life on this planet with other people, because we've seen so much destabilization of systems that once appeared solid. And in many cases, the key word is appeared. In many cases, these institutions, governments, businesses, all of that, churches, they appeared solid, but underneath was really a framework that was not built on, you know, real truth in a lot of cases. And so what we're going through now is the dismantling, I feel, of structures, of institutions, of ideas, beliefs that really don't serve us well and didn't, but they were many times rooted in an approach to life based on scarcity, based on fear. I'm not enough. There is not enough for everyone. Therefore, I must grab and hoard as much as I can. And so as we think about this coming year, I would just love us to make some space to widen that gap between stimulus and response. Take stock, do inventory, do a gentle, friendly assessment of our lives. And in fact, I'm going to put a link in the email here to a personal assessment that I've used with myself for years and years, probably 7 years now. And this assessment became like a very gentle walk through the house of my life when I first started using it years ago. And it helped me address the places where I was being stymied because I was afraid or anxious or uncertain. It helped me gain clarity on the areas of my life that really needed restoration. It gave me a sense of, oh, I can take tiny steps in this area and this area right now, today. I don't have to wait any longer. I can take steps right now, today, that will move me more into the kind of artful life that I long for, that I envision, that I want to become clearer, that I want to step into more fully. And one example of that, pretty simple example, is this guitar. When I did that assessment at the first of this year, when I was doing the Heal Plus Create retreat, the virtual retreat with so many teachers, and many of you joined us for that. But I offered this assessment at the very beginning of that retreat and asked people to go ahead and use it. Let's gain clarity. What do we wish to create more of, less of, different of in our lives? And one thing I noticed as I was doing that assessment at the beginning of this year was I needed to restore my connection to music. As a young guy, I played a violin. In fact, it was a violin my father created for me. He made several violins when I was a really young kid, and many years later, he finished this one and gave it to me as a gift. And so I play a violin that my father created for me that it has such meaning to me. I played in a youth symphony in near Seattle in my teens. But then when I jumped into being adult, that all kind of went away because I realized I wasn't going to have the level of talent and also the level of just raw commitment it would take to move from where I was at 15 years old playing the violin to become a person making a living doing it. Well, back then I still bought the lie that if it won't earn you money, then it's not worth doing. You can't be a successful creative, you know, in music, let's say, if you aren't earning a full-time living at it. Well, that's such a lie. And over the decades, you know, after I got married and had children and just working and all of that, music took a lesser and lesser role in my life. Of course, I still have playlists on Spotify that I love, but as far as me engaging with music, making it, as a kid, I was in a church, as many of you know, and that church, we made a lot of music and I sang songs and they touched me deeply emotionally. And it was an important, moving part of my life. And So anyway, at the beginning of this year, when I did that assessment, one of the areas that was calling out to me was, hey, reconnect with music in some way. And I went back to my boyhood dream of playing a guitar because um, because the violin is more of a performance instrument. You don't really sit around a campfire and play a guitar while people kind of chat. It's something everyone needs to be quiet and listen to most of the time. Obviously, there's fiddles and various ways of doing it a little more friendly, but I always wanted to play the guitar because it just seemed like such a cool thing. Throw a guitar over your back, ride your bike down to the park and play a tune out there under a tree, something like that, or sit around a campfire, or, just the list goes on in ways that I really wanted to have this friendly social instrument. So I put that down. I want to learn, and that's been on my list for a long time. And I said, okay, this is the year to start it. Well, as many things go, I spent most of this year working really hard and looking at the guitar over in the corner and saying, yep, I've made a step toward my dream. I have a guitar. And every once in a while I'd sit down and strum it a little bit. Eventually I went and bought a battery for the tuner so that I could learn how to tune it. Well, again, feeling like I'm making great strides. Still, here's the end of the year coming up and I don't know how to play a tune on this guitar. So several weeks ago, I hired one of my friends in town who is an amazing guitarist to become my teacher and got my first lesson under my belt. I'm having my second one tomorrow. And I'm currently learning 3 chords, the C chord, the G chord, and the E chord. Well, and the fourth one, the E minor chord. I'm not going to play any of them for you right now because I'm still, it's just me strumming some strings, an area of creative recovery in my life. In this case, music. In this case, learning something new that is not comfortable. I'm not good at it. I'm not going into it with the intention of making a living at it, or even necessarily ever displaying it as a talent, like go play in front of people. I mean, it may happen, but that's not the reason I'm doing it. The reason I'm doing it is because my intuitive inner self, through the process of assessment, my intuitive inner self said, look, this is something that's needed. And, if you've read The Creative Cure, if you've hung out with me at all, that I see creativity as this primal, vital life force energy that keeps unthinkable numbers of galaxies spinning, and also is what beats in our own hearts. And it's the spark that showed up when you showed up, and it will never happen again in the future of the universe, and it never happened before in the history of the universe. You are that event. And not to put you under too much pressure, but that's how much you matter. Like, your life matters, and the fact that you have longings and desires to create more of what matches who you really are in this life, that matters. And when your creative inner self is calling you to experience something, to develop something, to do something more or different, I just want to use my own experience as an example of that. Means you have to go back into uncertainty like this. I do not know how to put my fingers in enough of the right places on the right strings to make a song yet. And so that means that every time I sit down to practice right now, I feel awkward. I feel incompetent. I start to wonder if maybe I'm wasting my time. I just don't want anybody to hear it, right? Yet. So because I have a different perspective on that part of the process, which is the reason why so many things stop, is because anytime we're starting something we don't know yet, which is the kind of the bedrock of creativity, to step into your true originality means you have to step outside of what you've already been doing in some way. It means you have to step into the unknown, because otherwise it's not new, it's not original, it's not fresh. It doesn't mean you can't use, or it's not connected to the rest of your life or the experiences you've had. But it does require that phase of awkwardness, of feeling incompetent and wondering if anything good will ever come of it. The other thing that's happening neurologically whenever you do something that's, really deeply new, for example, learn a different language or learn a new instrument, a new musical instrument, or you start to just name it. If it's going to require a process, especially when it goes as deep as language or, you know, music. These things are deeply into the framework of how we see the world. For example, I only speak English, and I know that if I go to Spain and live there for a few months and really commit to learning the language through immersion, I will begin to develop a different perspective on the world. I'll begin to imbibe the perspective that can only be understood through a different language, a different way of explaining and seeing and describing the world, right? So the same thing with all of the rest of this. We have to learn different languages. And when we do that, we are actually growing, developing new neural pathways inside of our brain. We're actually opening things up. And as we get older, we reach middle age, we've seen all the things. We haven't, but that's part of what our brain tells us. Hey, we've seen it all. We've already had the first kiss a bunch of times. We've had the first sex. We've had the new car. We've had the job. We've moved to a new house. We've done many, many things. So it can feel as if, is this all there is? And one way to stay alive inside of life, is to go learn something you don't know yet, something that is calling to you, to go practice it, to go get into it, to immerse yourself in it, because you're actually opening up parts of your brain that oftentimes stay very locked down, right? So knowing how to go into the discomfort of something new and telling yourself, communicating to the parts of yourself that feel concerned about that, that, hey, of course, we're going to do this very badly at first. Oh, and by the way, we are not going to worry about how we're going to turn this into a business or have it turn us into a TikTok or Instagram star or anything. All we're going to do is learn for the joy of learning. And that's something that takes us back to the child's mind, the beginner's mind that is talked about in so many traditions. Unless we're willing to go back to stages where we don't know, we're not sure, we're not confident, we're not competent, unless we're willing to do that, we will keep getting some version of a rote version of life. And so it is a great passion of mine to learn how and remember to stay alive inside of my life, you know, and doing new things and delving into the creative impulses that we have. That's one way, following those leads. Like if something has been calling your name for a long time, it's one way to stay alive inside of life. How about that? It's a good thing I don't do blooper reels for these updates, because that would be long and maybe entertaining. All right, so I think I'm going to wrap for now, and I just want to say thank you so much for being here. I will invite you to the New Year's Eve gathering. It's going to be for everybody. I'll make sure, and so watch your email for that. That'll be coming up soon. And I just can't wait to spend more time with you, one of my fellow humans on this planet who is committed to your own growth, to your own healing, to living a life of healed creativity, which to me, all of that starts to sound like medicine at a certain point. And the only purpose of healing is so that things work again. It's called restoration for a reason. We come back into a state where things are healthy and good and are joyful, right? So I just want to say again, thank you so much for being here. I love knowing that you're connected to me and that you are part of the medicine, part of the cure, by simply being committed to staying alive and finding out new things that light your eyes up and delight you and make you feel passionate. That is important. And I will talk to you very soon.